Asked about the Oklahoman using a headline, Mr. Unreliable, after he struggled in a playoff loss to the Grizzlies last season. Durant says he was offended by the criticism. What I heard was that people would talk about me and say that I don't have that killer dog in me like a Kobe Bryant or who else, like Mike Jordan. And those guys have. But I'm like, I wouldn't be able to survive this long in this league doing that stuff that I do at an elite level if I didn't have it. I wouldn't be able to do it for 7 straight years if I didn't have that you know? And sometimes that may not equate to wins or championships every year, but I feel as though I'm always consistent with what I do. I put in the work. We're talking about killer instinct. Does KD have it? Stephen A.
To some degree, yes, but I find his comments to be either not completely forthcoming, Skip, or not really understanding what's being said about him. First of all, what Kevin Durant needs to understand is that this dude is a superstar. At 6'11", with that handle and that range and that marksmanship, there has been no one in history like him. The closest thing we've seen to it is Iceman George Gervin, okay? But he's that kind of player. Kevin Durant has averaged at least 25 points a game since his rookie year. The dude has averaged at least 28 points over the last 4 years. He shoots 50% from the field the last 2 years. He shoots 40% from 3. He is as lethal as it comes. The problem is that level of greatness is what makes people question the other things that are missing about you, because those very, very few things that are missing are flagrant. They're very obvious and conspicuous because it seems to be the only thing holding you back. And ultimately what they're really, really saying is Russell Westbrook is your teammate and you don't mind deferring to Russell Westbrook from time to time. And that's a subject he simply has refused to tackle head on throughout the years. He'll tell you he loves his brother. He'll tell you he's got his back.
He does.
It was a very heartfelt words that he spoke about Russell Westbrook when he accepted the MVP, and you can see it touched Russell Westbrook as well as should. They're both great. But no matter how great Russell Westbrook is, and he is great, the bottom line is he ain't KD. There's only one KD, and it's Kevin Durant. He's a freak of nature.
Just on ability.
Just on ability alone.
Yeah.
He's a freak of nature. So when he's talking about, well, people think that I lack the killer instincts, it's not that Kevin Durant won't try to take over a game. It's not that he won't try to take over. It's not that he won't go out there and just slay you. The problem is if somebody else wanted to infiltrate the proceedings, let's say a Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant will say, sure. Why not? As opposed to MJ or Kobe, who would look at you like, have you lost your damn mind? You need to fall back right now.
That's exactly right.
And that's the subject at hand. Yeah. It's not what Oklahoma, what the newspaper did was disrespectful.
Right.
Sure.
That was beyond the pale. What they did was disrespectful, and the sports editor, to his credit, apologized for that. Whatever. It wasn't the newspaper. It was some copy editor there that made that mistake. It happens. But but if you want to point to that being disrespectful, sure. But what other people are saying is not disrespectful at all to Kevin Durant. It's actually a tribute to the level of greatness we know he has inside of him.
And by the way, he did win the MVP last year.
He did.
Which he deserved.
When did I, so to speak, turn on Kevin Durant? When did I lose some respect for him for the first time?
When they lost the playoff series against Memphis.
Yeah.
And he had to play without Russell
Westbrook. And I got to see it firsthand. And I was rooting for him. I obviously picked him to win the series, and they won the first game at home, and they lost 4 straight games. And I don't want to harp on this or beat it to death, but without giving you the numbers, which I've dredged up about 49 times on the show, but late and close, Kevin Durant was not very good in those games. All the clutch shooting.
It's a bad series.
But he had 4 straight bad games. I really thought he was better than that. He proved last year he's great enough and gifted enough to win the MVP. Sure. But you hit on my point. What is glaring about this discussion is that Kevin plays with Russell. And Stephen A., that even though Kevin is more gifted than Russell is, but Russell's very gifted, but he's longer, bigger, got the more range. We know all that. But Russell Westbrook, to me, is made of a little tougher stuff than Kevin is. That's no disrespect to Kevin, because there's not much like Russell Westbrook in this league right now, because Kevin has a little doubt in him, while Russell has no doubt in his psyche, almost to a fault. What's that?
A little crazy.
Yeah, well, but it's good,
but good crazy.
Yeah, Russell, look, Kevin Durant, and I respect this about him, he's a deep thinker. He puts himself on the couch, sometimes to a fault. Kobe doesn't do it to a fault. Like you said, there might be ulterior motives to Kobe, trying to provoke reactions that he can use as fuel for him. You know, okay, that's like an MJ tactic.
Kobe's an assassin.
Yeah, okay, he's an assassin. Well, we've never doubted that. I've never had any doubts that he's the closest to Jordan in psyche, in killer dog, if we can use Kevin's quote, that we may ever see. But in this case, Kevin thinks a lot about who am I, and he let Nike do the not nice Kevin. The whole promotion with the shoes, because he wanted people to say, oh, he's not a nice guy. And then all of a sudden, he was a league leader in technical fouls. That makes him a tough guy. Not really, but Russell is good crazy. Russell doesn't think about anything except basketball, basket, you're in my way, get out of my way, I'm going to sky over you and dunk on you. That's Russell Westbrook's. He has a killer instinct and mentality that I don't always see in Kevin Durant. And because they are teammates, 1A and 1B, that it's glaring, because you can see it on a nightly basis. Here he is and here he is. And this is a fascinating year, because Kevin's entering his 8th season and Russell his 7th. So I think it's about time to ask, can they win together? Are they a good match? Is this the year they break through?
It's a good question, but I think it's unfair to just limit it to those two. There's a coach named Scott Brooks.
Okay, that's fair.
That has to be put into the equation. I like Scott Brooks, genuinely, and I think he's a good coach. And I don't think you can argue with his success and the accomplishments, their winning record, the culture that exists there with him and Sam Presti as the GM, the success they've enjoyed, etc., even though it's devoid of a championship. But there have been many instances where people have looked at Scott Brooks and said he could have done better. He's gotten out-coached or whatever. Now, obviously, it's against Greg Popovich, and, you know, one time they beat Greg Popovich, so I don't want to hear that Scott Brooks
They didn't just beat him. They ran him off the floor.
I don't want to hear that Scott Brooks can't coach. That's not fair to that man. But coaches, it's not just about X's and O's. It's about that psychological management. And because Russell Westbrook is that natural rough rider,
he is.
You have to understand that the more we ask of Kevin Durant to step up, the more we're asking of Kevin Durant to deal with that alpha dog that is Russell Westbrook.
I agree.
And if you're asking that of Kevin Durant, then you're not asking it enough of Scott Brooks.
How can he deal with the alpha dog? I don't think Russell is coachable. And I'm not saying that in a terrible way.
I think he is. I think he is, because I think that Russell Westbrook gets a bad rap because he's not selfish. He's just a winner. He's a competitor.
He is.
And he's not just about winning basketball games. He's about beating you in his individual matchup. And so what happens is, yes, it's a requirement for Kevin Durant to step in and be somewhat more assertive in that regard. But it's also the job of the coach. Scott Brooks was a point guard on this level. Maurice Cheeks was his assistant coach. He was a point guard. Look.
And you know what? I think they both threw up their hands on Russell.
Well, then that's their fault, because that's not right to Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's got enough responsibility being on the court, having to be the superstar that he is. He has to play alongside and on the court with Russell Westbrook. I'm not saying he doesn't have to do anything, because you've got to massage that a little bit. I wouldn't change Russell Westbrook for anything in the world. Let him be him. But the flip side to it is that Scott Brooks has to step up, and Scott Brooks is always very celebratory and very complimentary of Russell Westbrook, as he should be. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with reeling him in. And in all my years of watching the Oklahoma City Thunder play, I'm talking about during the game, don't know what, I hear about things that happen behind the scenes, obviously, but watching them play on the court, I've never really seen Scott Brooks reel him in, and that's a problem.
All right, we talk about does Kevin Durant have that killer instinct? Perhaps a lot of it's mental. You mentioned the Not Nice KD program. Remember, he started Strong and Kind, where he tried to say that being
That's
kind
a good one. Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're weak. So it's more so, perhaps, from what we're saying here, a mental thing for one Kevin Durant.
He's not weak, but he doesn't have a championship. And what we're saying is that might be the missing piece.
That's the missing
piece. Do you want a ring or don't you?
Do you want a ring or don't you, KD? That's the question. Bradley